good afternoon, and thank you for spending a bit of time with us. This is a topic that's been near and dear to my heart. I mean, slips and trips. Those of you who know me know that it's been a topic I've been working on for a very, very long time. But the importance of good reporting specifically has been a key part of the training and the work that I've done for over 15 years now. And it's been the one area when I do training where I don't always have an answer for people. It's always been the problem. Whenever we do work on slips, trips and falls, whenever we do training, whenever we do some consultancy or we help a client, we're helping them come up with answers for what they can do about their slip, trip and fall problems. And the one bit that I've always struggled with is how you get good quality reporting. I always tell people they need it, and then they ask what it looks like, and I say, well, I don't know. Who've done it relatively well and some who haven't. A few years ago, I met Alison at an event that we were both speaking at, and she showed me the Proactively system, and it just sort of struck a chord with me because I think it answers a few of the key issues around what good reporting looks like. It's a great example of how to get good quality information and data, and anybody who knows me knows that I'm all about good quality information and data. So what we're going to talk about, I'll introduce myself and talk a little bit about the background, a little bit about the importance of good reporting when it comes to slips, trips and falls. And then I'll hand over to Alison, who'll introduce herself and will talk us through what the Proactively mobile reporting system does and some of the advantages of it. We'll have a bit of a discussion about how it answers some of the challenges around getting good quality information from a health and safety point of view, from a wider point of view, but specifically from a slips, trips and falls point of view. So for those of you that don't know me, just a very brief introduction. I've spent my entire career essentially working on slips, trips and falls, which is why I'm so interesting at the parties. But I've spent over 15 years working with the Health and Safety Executive, so the UK regulator on health and safety, primarily investigating why people have slipped, tripped and fallen, but also conducting HSE's research into preventing slips, trips and falls and developing HSE guidance, and then latterly working with clients proactively to help them reduce slip, trip and fall risk. So that's what we do. We went independent from HSE about 2.5 years ago. And in that time, we've been doing exactly what we did whilst we were at HSE, which is supporting clients with proactively reducing their risk of falls. So not just learning from the ones they've had, but doing some work to try and prevent future falls. And that gives itself some challenges. My business partner, Rachel, is also formerly HSE. She was a project manager at HSE, so she's a background in both training and in running her own business, which was very useful from my point of view. And she was a member of the HSE commercial development team. And for those of you that aren't aware, Rachel is also my wife. So those of you who thought you were getting a mild-mannered slips, trips and falls nerd, actually you're getting the kind of balls to the wall thrill seeker who'd start a business with his wife. And that joke is a lot funnier when she's not sitting in the next room. I haven't actually rolled that joke since doing virtual training, so we might cut that one out next time. So that's our background, working with the UK regulator, primarily in a scientific capacity. So I worked at the laboratory and I was the technical lead for the falls prevention team there. And we did the science, the research and the investigation that underpinned all of HSE's work on preventing slips, trips and falls. The reason that we're here is this. So I'm going to show you a video, and this is a video that I was provided at one of the events that I spoke at many years ago. I did some work with the steel stockholding industry, which is a high hazard industry. Essentially, they deal with very, very heavy pieces of steel that they move around the country. And any one of those has the potential to turn any other object in the world into 2 dimensions. It's extremely heavy. They have an awful lot of focus on health and safety in terms of preventing these potentially very nasty incidents. You'll see in the background of this video as we're watching, there's a guy who's accompanying a steel cable walking up the alley there, and he's stood to the right of that. He's out of the line of fire. He's not in harm's way should anything happen and that energy be released. You can see in the foreground we've got this vehicle, and there's a guy working on it. There's a cradle in there in which the steel rolls sit. So when they're transporting them, they can strap them into the cradle and there's no chance of them being shed from the vehicle as it moves around and causing terrible damage. In order to maintain a level access platform on the back of that vehicle, what they do is they replace these steel plates to cover up the cradle when it's not in use. And this is what we're going to see. The guy's up here and he's replacing these plates in the cradle. They're quite heavy, so he doesn't place the second one particularly well. He drops it into place, it bounces, it doesn't sit well, and as he treads on it, it moves and he falls. So it's not a slip or a trip, it's a fall. And we're going to see two things. There's a fall on the level, so he has an initial fall just on the back of the vehicle. And then we see the consequence of that fall, which is a fall from the vehicle. And there's two things really that I think are worth drawing out of this. And well, I'll start the video off. One of the issues here is the amount of energy involved in a fall. I know there's some people already in the room who are well aware of the potential injuries that can result from slips, trips and falls, but we still see them as quite minor incidents. You know, if you're really unfortunate, you might break a wrist or you might bang your head a little bit. But actually, once you've lost your balance, there's an awful lot of energy involved. So here we go. And then the second part of that fall, that secondary consequence from losing his balance. So the first impact here actually breaks his hip. Very, very nasty fall just in the level he's at. But as he rotates off, he's not got his hard hat strapped on. It comes off, breaks both his legs, has a very, very nasty head injury. And this guy was off work for apparently about 8 months. Now, the reason I'm showing this is when I was given this video at one of these training sessions, they said, please show it to people and use it. And we want other people to learn from it. So looking at that, it's easy to spot very, very quickly at the state of housekeeping on the back of that vehicle, the task that he's got to do, why he's up there in the first place, why there's no edge protection, why he's not restrained. There could be a number of ways that they could modify that task to prevent that injury from happening again. And in fact, that's what they've done. They've changed the way that operation is done so that nobody is at risk of having that same incident. But they've done it as a reaction to that guy having life-changing injuries. And that's the big problem that we have with slips, trips and falls. It's twofold. One, we tend to have a lot of very good ideas after the fact, once somebody's had a very, very nasty fall and a very, very nasty injury. And the second one is those ideas aren't always evidence-based. We need to know what people are, what the root causes of some of those issues are in order to get the right simple solution for the particular problem that you've got. So the big challenge really is understanding the falls that you have within an organization or that a client of yours has within their organization. And if you can answer those 4 very simple questions, you've got an awful lot of information to help you work proactively to try and reduce risk and prevent falls. They're very simple questions. How many falls does your organization have? That can be an extremely difficult question to answer. It can be a particularly difficult question to get a realistic answer to, because as we know within the health and safety world, you know, health and safety professionals are well aware that lots of incidents go unreported, and you tend to get, you know, your health and safety pyramid. So you'll have one fatal accident for each one of those. You'll have a number of major injuries and then some minor injuries and then some near misses. But we don't capture near misses and data very well on slips, trips and falls, primarily because our genuine near miss is that moment where you lose your grip on the floor or you catch your foot on something, but you don't fall. And 2 steps later, you've forgotten about it. The next threshold is you do lose your balance, you do fall, you hit the ground, you're lucky enough not to have injured yourself particularly seriously, you're immediately embarrassed, you dust yourself off, you make sure nobody saw and you carry on, even if you have to hobble away. And that doesn't get captured because it's very easy to think of slips, trips and falls as very personal, as only human error. You should have been paying attention. So actually understanding how many falls you've got is very difficult. So a good reporting system that not only captures injuries and incidents, claims, but captures things like near misses, hazards before any actual incident has happened over them, or examples of good practice, allows an organization to build up some information that they can use to reduce risk. Understanding where incidents happen is very, very important. So looking at the real specifics of where an incident happened, not it happened in the canteen, but it happens, you know, we have a history of 3 incidents at the far end of the canteen where the drinks machine is. We'll help you identify if you have a leaking drinks machine on a smooth floor. There's work that we did at HSE looking at falls in dementia care. And as part of that work, we did some interviews with staff as to where the falls were happening. And we also gave them floor plans of all of the wards that they were working on and said, put a sticker on every time somebody has a fall. Now, in the interviews, when asked, all the staff said the falls all happen in the bedrooms. The individuals get up at night, they go to the toilet, they fall either coming out of the bed or as they're going to the toilet, and they get found in the morning. And that's a genuine issue in all geriatric care. It's something that's very well known. When we looked at the data, we saw that actually there were an equal number of falls in the bedrooms and by the nurses' station. Now, the difference there, I suspect, is during the day, somebody falls by the nurses' station and they're immediately helped up. They're given a cup of tea, they're checked over. It's very easy to see if they're okay or if they need any further medical attention. If you find somebody who fell during the night and they were potentially going to the toilet at the time, they've been there a long time, it's more traumatic for the individual who fell, it's more traumatic for the member of staff who finds them. And so that's the perception bias they have. Those are the incidents that they remember. So actually, if you can really get down to tracking where things are happening, you can start to hotspot where you might have a problem, environmental, behavioural or task related. Understanding what your falls are seems very simple, but on a lot of our risk assessments, slips, trips and falls is one line with one tick box, but slips are very different from trips and people fall for other reasons. And that's something that I expound on at great length if you're really brave enough to spend a full day talking about it. We tend to talk about slips for the best part of 3/4 of the day and then go into trips and falls on steps and stairs and things later on. So just being able to break down the different types of incidents can be very important. But the most important question is that last one, that why question, getting down to genuine root cause of why the incidents are happening. And doing that can be very, very difficult because people make assumptions when it comes to slips, trips and falls all the time. It seems very obvious and lots of people have a very good idea as to what it is, but actually when you look into the science beneath it, there are some common causes, and if you can start to identify those, then you can start to do something proactive about it. As a quick example, this was some work that was done by my team when I was at HSE. We did some work looking at falls at the National Gallery portico entrance. So this entrance here, you can see under the columns there are 3 doors. Each of those doors has a very small step, about 80 mil high. And people were having lots of incidents, catching their feet and tripping on the way in, or not seeing the step and falling on the way out, having a little air step. So at the gallery, they had about 15 RIDDOR reportable incidents a year. So in the UK, that's a legally reportable incident. These are incidents to members of the public. So essentially, this meant that these were people who needed immediate medical assistance, largely 15 people a year going to hospital from having had falls at that entrance. And the question that was raised with us by the gallery and the local authority they worked with, visitors a year, are 15 injuries just the price of doing business when you've got that much traffic? So we set up cameras and we filmed the entrances. So the 3 entrances, we filmed each of them for 6 hours, and some poor individual in my team went half mad, counting every single person who went in, every single person who came out, and whether we had any incidents. We had 12,500 journeys that day, but no reported incidents. Nobody had mentioned anything. The gallery had quite a good system where all the security guards kept a notebook and they would write things down, and they captured about 130 sort of near misses a year at those entrances, but no instances were captured or reported. So from the gallery's point of view, that's a perfect day. They're not got a big issue with slips, trips and falls. On camera, we caught 466 incidents, which included 9 people who were obviously injured. We had some falls, we had some people who cut knees, we had some people who had to be helped to walk away because they twisted ankles very badly. If you took that as an average day, it suggests that they've probably got something like 250,000 incidents a year that are going completely unreported, and about 4,500 potential people who are being injured. Now, we made some modifications to that entrance. So we're talking about one of the most highly controlled grade 1 listed buildings in the UK, but we made some modifications to the way the steps were designed, and the way that the doors opened and the area was lit and the mats outside and so on, and reduced the rate of incidents by going back and filming again by about 1/3. And all of that impact was people going in. There were further complications with people going out. But we were able to make those changes and prove that they'd worked because we were monitoring those entrances. So I'm not suggesting that what all businesses need to do is get cameras up and film everywhere and have nothing but film data to go through for weeks and weeks and weeks. But it shows that with good evidence, you can make evidence-based decisions that genuinely reduce risk. So on that basis, I'm going to hand over to Alison now and let her introduce herself, because, as I said, I think the proactively reporting system really helps bridge some of the gaps and the challenges. So I've set out a number of challenges that I see when I work with businesses or when I go through data analysis for businesses. And one of the big first ones is getting people involved in the first place. It's getting people to make reports. And there's numbers of challenges, the first of which is many of the systems that people have are very onerous. They take a lot of time. They're perhaps desk-based, which means that people, if they have an incident, have to remember when they've finished that bit of their shift to go back to a computer somewhere to type something up or to ring a member of the safety team. It's also, if you're working on the front line, it can be very difficult when you report an incident and you pop a piece of paper in a box or you send an email off to a member of the safety team. If you've spotted a broken tile that's causing a trip hazard, if you send that incident off to somebody and 3 months later, nothing's been done about it because these things require planning and they require budgetary approval and so on, but you've had no feedback, instant turn to people is, well, nobody listens. Nobody does anything about these. And so people completely disengage with the process. So I'll hand over to Alison and let her introduce herself. And if Alison, if you could talk about the system and how we address challenge 1, that would be fantastic.
Great, thanks, Rob. Just to introduce myself very quickly, my name is Alison Hinde. I've worked in health, safety, environment, a bit of quality, a bit of security for about 30 years. In that time, what was very obvious to me was how unpopular these risk management solutions are, often very paper-based Excel spreadsheets. And so I moved to Switzerland 6 years ago and had a chance for a rethink. I was very lucky to meet a great group of people, and we worked together to produce the proactively mobile reporting system. So the idea is to have a digitized solution that is much more user-friendly. Getting people involved was our #1 priority. The first thing, we're a mobile reporting system. So mobile phone, everyone carries it with them everywhere, always in your pocket, always available, easy to use. So that's one of our big focus. It works anywhere. So even if you're not in mobile network coverage, it will save a report on your phone and then send later when you're back in coverage. So for example, if you're in construction industry, you might be working underground or something like that. It means that you can send a report in really quickly and then get back to work. So it's really time efficient as well. No training needed because it's all very intuitive. And it uses some of those amazing functions that a phone has. You know, it takes photographs, it takes time and date stamps your information, you can put signatures, all those sort of things in that makes it really a good way to collect reports. Second on here, feedback. As Rob said, if you send a report and it's like it going into a black hole, you have no idea what will happen, then you don't feel very motivated to actually get involved with the system. So we have a feedback system where the manager, once he's seen the report, can send a thank you straight back to the person who made the report so that they know that it's been noted and that something will be done about it. Which brings us to Action Tracker. You know, what people really want is action. They don't want to send a report, and we have the Action Tracker system in there. So actions are assigned, they're completed, they're closed out, and even reviewed to see if they're effective. And that means that you get results from the system. Now, particularly health and safety is often seen as very negative. We're talking about, and Rob's here talking about slips and trips and things that are near misses. It has that negative connotation. We're trying to turn that on its head a bit and be positive. So you can also use the system for rewarding a job that's been well done. And that's a great way of learning. I think, is it Heinrich who said that 0.01% of things go badly, and then 99.99% of issues are good. So what we want to do is learn from the good things as well as the bad things. Finally, down there, anonymous reporting. Now, when we're talking about safety culture, we want open communication. We're all hoping towards that. But organizations are at different stages in that journey. Particularly if you're a contractor and you see something, then there's issues with, you know, this could cost time, this could cost money. So those sensitive issues, we still want to learn from them. We still want them to be reported. So with our system, we also have the ability to report anonymously. Okay, Rob? Oh, here's a picture of the feedback. So you can see the reports that were sent in and then the message that has come back from the manager. Okay.
Yeah, so I think the second challenge for me then, and it's great to have an inclusive system like that. I think what I've been hinting at right from the beginning is that all decision making, particularly around health and safety, needs to be data driven. Particularly with slips, trips and falls, there's an awful lot of someone's good idea, and it's so pervasive that it's in things like standards. We've got standards in different industries that define how things should be designed and should be done, that come from a decision somebody made in a meeting, because of course that's going to make sense, and there's no evidence for it, and actually some of them are detrimental. They make things more risky, but nobody's challenged that because it's now written down somewhere. So having access to good quality data lets you make decisions based on evidence and reduce risk. So you've got this fantastic mobile reporting app. It lets people and encourages people to put in all of these reports, but how do we pull all that together to turn our incidents, our near misses, our good practice, as you've said, into good decisions and good action?
So what we're aiming for is to have the right person with the right data at the right time. First of all, with it being a mobile phone system, that information comes into the web portal as real-time information. So if you think back on all those times when you had to process those paper forms and you saw it, and or even that an incident has happened and you should have known about it, but you didn't. Those just too late moments. What we're really trying to do is get away from that. So having real-time data collection is a huge advantage. So that information comes in, it can be read, the report can be read, and it straight away goes into the dashboard. The dashboard is completely customizable for what you as an individual want to see. So it might be that you're a senior director and you want to have a company-wide view, or it might be that you just want to see your team. It might be that you want a strategic, so over a long period of time, or you want a tactical sort of day-by-day analysis of your data. It also, the different types of data that you can collect, leading indicators and lagging indicators. Now, when I go to lots of companies, I see a lot of lagging indicators. By these, we're talking about incidents, we're talking about near misses, so things that have really happened. But what companies are driving towards is collecting more leading indicators. So this can be a measure of how well you're managing health and safety, and hopefully a prediction of your future performance. So for what we're talking about with slips, trips and falls, we would have the lagging indicators of those near misses. And then the leading indicators are perhaps inspections where you went and you walked around the workplace and you said, yes, this is good. Or even, yes, there's a pile of water by the drinks machine, like Rob was saying, and this is a potential problem. So those are leading, looking to the future. And that's one of our big aspirations. Also down here, it's easy to share. So the information comes into the system and it's held securely. So people can sit in different teams and you will only see the information from your team. So for example, if you're in a large company and you have a department in France and a department in Germany, then the French people will only see the French information and the Germans will not see the French information. So that's how it's set up, that the information is confidential. But because it's all digital information, it's then very easy to share. And I'm sure you can imagine, we talked about those good practice forms. Think about your notice board, how wonderful it would be to be able to put a series of things that had gone well, and you can take those photos that have come in through the mobile app and write a bit about them and then put them on your notice board. And, you know, that has the added advantage of keeping your notice board current and interesting. Another thing I notice when I go into companies is how, you know, they tend to always have the same information about fire, emergency procedures and things. And if you can make it a bit more live and interesting, then it will again get people more involved in what's happening. Okay. Oh, yes, here's a picture of a dashboard. So you can see down the left-hand side, we have different dashboards that have been created for environment quality. And this one's showing engagement. So we've measured hazard spotting. So this is making observations. We've got the hazards, which are the negative observations, the jobs well done, which are the positive. If you can see the bars change color on the chart, that's because for our KPIs, we've set an objective for these. So for the hazard spotting, I think we said 4. It's just an example that I've made up, but 4 hazards observations each month. And you can see that when we go above that number 4, the bar has changed color. Now, number of hazard reports, yes. But then what we really want is not people to report hazards, but them to fix them themselves. So a measure of engagement, a measure of empowerment. And we can see in this question, it says basically, have you made it safe yourself? And we can see then that 12 out of those 22, the person who sent the report in actually fixed it themselves. So that is a really good measure of engagement. And I'm sure you're aware of, if you have the new ISO standard, measuring engagement is one of the big differences from the previous version of the 45,000 standard. Down the bottom, we have measured the number of training courses, but not just how many people went to the course, but you can rate that training. And then, of course, you can split it up. You can say, the manual handling training that we're doing, what results did we get? So do we, and by location, so we can actually identify which training is being the most well received. And we can cross-reference that with how many hazards have come in for manual handling in the period following that. And you would probably expect people to be reporting more because they're more aware. And then we can see through this system how the number of reports might tail off. And you think maybe we need some refresher training. So it really makes that data come alive. The final graph on there is the time to close out an action. That also is a very good leading measure of engagement. Okay.
I think that, to me, that's the absolute core of the system, and it's the thing that excited me when I first saw it, and that's probably tells you more about me than it does about most people. But the fact that you've got these customizable forms, so the organization can choose the information it's looking to gather. So you're not just using a standard sort of reporting template, as you hinted at. People have the same standard risk assessment and information available everywhere, but this allows you to look for the information that matters to you, and then to bring it together in those dashboards and actually analyze it, so that you've got the ability to look at that information in a visual way, and to use it to do something proactive and hopefully reduce risk in the future. I suppose the challenge with that is, particularly in a larger organization, if you've got an awful lot of information coming in, if you're potentially a manager in that chain and you're getting these sort of reports and notifications of incidents, how do you manage that? How do you understand what's being reported on a daily basis? What's the highest priority? What do you need to do next, and which bits can you delegate somewhere else?
So just like you're saying, Rob, what we're trying to do is get much better transparency and have a proactive approach. Now, for this, we need to collect good data. What we, particularly with a mobile reporting app, can really benefit from is the use of photos. So I don't know how many reports that you've looked at that are handwritten reports and you can't read the handwriting. It probably got dropped in a puddle at some point. The system took a week to get it to you, and half the data is missing. With the mobile reporting app, we don't have any of those problems. Like we said, it comes in real time. The photos can really accurately describe a situation, and it's all time, date, individual stamped. Think of those photos now. I know we're all concerned about data privacy, so we're trying not to take pictures of people. But if you're looking at incident reporting, then the ability to take a picture of the location of what happened, of how the machine was at that time, immediately is really powerful. You can get some great data from that. So then the system is about automation. So that information comes as a notification to the person that needs to have it. And you can imagine that the poor health and safety manager might be then bombarded with all these observations and things coming in. what we can do with the system is customize it. So this is by an individual. So the health and safety manager might then say, I'm only interested in seeing things that are a high priority, a high risk, and that something needs to be done by me. So the ones that the worker hasn't fixed immediately. So he will only get those notifications. And those are the really important ones that he can do something about immediately. The others will, of course, sit on the system, and every day he can look through them and he can read them and know what's going on. So it's about targeting. Another thing that we have on there is the action tracker. So I've sat in a lot of meetings, perhaps you have as well, where we have a big list of actions and it says, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Yes, yes, no, 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 no. And the meeting gets bigger, the list gets longer, and a lot of people waste a lot of time. With the action tracker, we have transparency, what has been done and what hasn't, and what has gone overdue. So I need to chase it. What are my actions? It's all filtered out. So, or the actions of my team. So it makes it really easy to know what you have to do and have that information already available. And then the history. So because we're dealing with compliance here, we need to have an auditable system. And on the next slide, it shows us the history. So everything is time date stamped. So and if you edit any of the information in the system, this also will be shown on the history. So for example, if you are doing an incident report, you'll be able to see if someone changed the level of risk from a high to a low. It will be recorded in the system. So here is a few screenshots. So the system is very flexible. Here on the left, we've got a screenshot from a mobile phone, and this person is doing an inspection for COVID on personal protective equipment. So you can see they're looking at the wearing of PPE, the standard questions, is it fit for purpose, etc. And you can see they've gone yes, yes, no, no, and then made some comments. There's been no training on how to put a mask on without contamination, and people are frequently touching the outside of the mask. I think we've probably all seen this happen. So the person with the mobile phone who is doing the inspection, he presses send and it comes into the web portal. So on the middle picture, you can see busy manager opens it up, and instantly you can see there's green ticks and there's red boxes. Well, the red boxes means there's something wrong. So we can see what those are. And the manager then is able to assign an action for that. Now, if we look over on the right-hand side, we can see that the action has been, well, the report was created. So that's the inspection happening. The manager opens it, and then the manager sets an action, and he says, there's these great videos that show how to put a mask on. I think you should show them at your next team meeting. And then the action gets closed. So the training has taken place, and they close it. They say that the videos have been shown and there was good discussion about it, resolved. Okay, so, and you can see it's all time date stamped. So that gives you a really good history of what has happened for this particular inspection. Okay, yeah.
And so this is the standard health and safety one, isn't it? Time and money. I mean, there's a couple of things for me with slips, trips and falls, one of which is, you know, if the old adage, and I know there's people in the chat who'll be overly familiar with this, but, you know, if you think that safety is expensive, try having an accident. The last time I spoke to an insurer for an accurate number on what the sort of average out of court settled slip claim was, and I know there's people in the chat who can contribute on this as well, and this was a long time ago as well, but you know, if you have a slip and you don't defend it and you can't defend it and you just roll over and pay out on it, you're probably looking at about 14k. That buys a lot of health and safety, but we're always looking for streamlining in systems in terms of saving us time and money, not spending a huge amount of time stuck in meetings talking about things, not spending a massive amount of time generating the information and then analyzing the information. So how does the system help us sort of make the most of our time and increase our efficiency?
Okay, so we have two things. Firstly, we're trying to automate to remove those time wasting tasks. So automating the workflows, we're looking for faster reporting, so faster inspections, going out and getting it done, you know, faster task assessment, so being able to think about your work before you do it. And you know, it quickly prompts you what you should think about. You can answer the questions and then get on with the work. We're looking for faster actions. So that action tracker we talked about earlier, so we can spend less time in meetings, and we're looking to always be audit ready. So I'm sure a lot of people on this call are used to having audits from the regulator, from the customer, from the ISO auditor and others. And a lot of time goes into making the company ready for that audit. You know, we'd like to say that, yes, the auditor walks through the door and just sees it as it is, but for a scheduled audit, generally, there has been a lot of preparation done. With this system, we're trying to reduce that preparation time. We're also trying to make better data-driven decisions. So there's the time issue, and then there's the what are you going to do? And with only a certain amount of resources, we want to be making the right decision. So we can only be sure on that if we have the right data to do it. And our dashboard can show where those priorities are. And all of this, of course, is going towards the goal of reducing incidents.
And then finally, the big question for me is, you know, we're all sitting on a Zoom call. We're au fait with the tech. What about the Luddites out there? What about those who are worried that if you're going to use a slightly more technological system than dropping a piece of paper in a box, what are the restrictions there? How easy is it to get hold of the app? How obviously they're relatively easy to fill out because of the way that you construct them, but you know, how do people manage these systems and access the technology? And also, I suppose, any of the other worries around technology and data security and all those types of things that go with an electronic.
Yeah, the last time I talked to someone about this, they did a trial and they tried it out on their children and they got on quite well with it. I would say that my trial people are my the grandparents, and they have used it quite successfully, and they're not really technically minded. We also have it being used very successfully in a ski club here in Switzerland. I would say most of the members are of an older generation, and you know, I've explained a lot about what a QR code is, but once they have it, they're up and running, then the implementation has gone really smoothly. What we're trying to do is make it easy to get started, easy to use, and then easy to maintain, so keep people using it. How we do this? So first of all, it's a cloud system, which means that there is no installation needed. You can just be up and running out of the box immediately. For the mobile app, then it's very easily available on the standard Google Play App Store. And we even have something, a QR code, which means that you can get it really quickly. So for example, if you have contractors working on your site, as they come in through reception, and when they're doing their induction, they can press their phone against the QR code and it will automatically link them into your system. And then when they will have a restricted access to just send you information. It fits how you work, easy to use. So as Rob has said, and we'll see on the next slide, the system comes with standard forms so that you can get up and going quickly. So for instant reporting, instant investigation, task assessments, this kind of thing, inspections. But every organization is different. And I've seen quite a few sort of ISO in a box type solutions where it gets dropped on a company, and it's great for the health and safety manager because, you know, they've bought something and it's all done, it's ticked their box, but everyone else in the company hates it. So we have really tried to get away from that. You can bring those standard forms in, but then you customize them for how you work. And ideally, you have a system where you have champions within your workplace from each different department, and they can come together and they can say what they think of those questions. So should it be using different terminology? It doesn't work like that. We need a new question. We need to delete this question, etc. And then you can work with the champions to make that into the mobile form that you'll be using, and all you do is press publish and it will appear in people's mobile devices. It's really quick and easy, and it means that it will be appropriate for what your people need. And then of course there's support. So Rob is a partner for us in the UK, and would be available for advice. And of course we are as well. There is a lot of help built into the system. So it's there as you have a problem, it's easily accessible, you know, it's automatic, and it can show you how to solve some of your problems. If you're trying to get consistent information. So for example, someone's doing a risk assessment and it says, is the risk high, medium, low? Now, when I see that question, I'm always a bit confused because I don't know what high means, what medium means, what low means. You can also build an info button into the system and say exactly what sort of information you're looking for. So you can give examples and lead people through how they should fill in the form. So this will help you get much more consistent information. Okay. Oh, here. So this is a quick look at the drag and drop form builder. So you can see on the left hand side, we've got a list of questions and you just drag them over onto the colored portion and then fill in what your question is. And like I said, press publish and it will appear on the mobile app. So really easy to use.
Right. I mean, I think we've gone the best part of 40 minutes and nobody said the COVID word. This is it. I saw this in a presentation that you gave elsewhere, and I thought it was just worth dropping in here because we've been talking about sort of traditional safety, particularly in terms of preventing slips, trips and falls and monitoring near misses and incidents and things we're all familiar with. But one of the things that I really liked about the system is because of what you've just talked about, the ability to design these custom forms, to ask whatever questions you want, to gather the evidence you need, you've been able to adapt it to do all sorts of things. So in this case, you know, it's been adapted to work with COVID audits. So I think that's a really good example of the way the system is customizable. Have you got anything sort of to add to that on the way that you've gone about taking what people might see as a safety reporting system and addressing some of the other health issues and the sort of other challenges?
Okay, for coronavirus, the one of the big things we do is screening. So a lot of companies are taking people's temperature and filling in forms at reception. Now we can push that back and you can send to your visitors, to your employees, a do it at home. And they can fill in the very simple checklist of have you got any of these symptoms? If you've got the symptoms, please don't come. If you ticking okay, then come and we can maybe do your another check at reception. But the idea is that they won't have got on the public transport. They won't have come into your office potentially being ill. And you can then contact those people if it's employees and see, talk to them more deeply about their symptoms and see, you know, perhaps they should be at work and perhaps they shouldn't, and you can follow that through. So we've got some very tailored things for coronavirus that are helping. Quick overview of how the system works. So there's two parts of the system. There's the orange bit, which is the mobile reporting app, which you got from Google Play and the App Store. And then the blue is the web portal. So that comes over your browser and that's also mobile friendly. So just very quickly, the first is we build. So the system comes with those standard forms, but you can customize them and you can see a bit of an image of the drag and drop form builder there. So customize your forms, push them out to the mobile app. People use it, they can report their observations or their incidents or their inspections or whatever, permit to work. Then that report gets sent real time into the system where the manager can read it. Hopefully he sees that that person has fixed the problem themselves, but perhaps potentially they need to set an action, assign the action to someone, the action gets closed, the action gets verified as effective, and that's the feedback loop going round. And then the fourth one on here, all that data comes together in our dashboard where we can analyze it. So that's just a really quick run through.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And I think big thanks to Alison for showing us that, because it's something that I talk to sort of a lot of my clients about as a way of solving that problem. Good reporting is very important, but how do I do good reporting? And I think to bring it back from my perspective to slips, trips and falls, you need to be able to identify the root causes of why you're having your slips, trips and falls and what they are in order to identify the right solutions. And the solutions are often simple, but that's what throws people out. Is because the solutions are simple, they assume that the causes are simple, and it's just whatever comes off the top of people's heads. Identifying common issues between incidents, between hazards, between good practice in terms of things like location. And I think as you've shown us, the ability to add a photograph gives you some very specific information on where the incident took place or where a hazard's been identified, that you can then use to query that data and start to look at where you best use your time and resources to minimize risk. Once you've found a way of solving your slip, trip and fall problems, and those solutions could be specification of new flooring, they could be treatments of floors or footwear, it could be changing the task, it could be a change in your cleaning regimes, you could be looking at the design of your steps and stairs. And anyone who wants that information, you can come to me afterwards, and you can, we do a much longer session on the root causes and the science behind slips and trips. I know many of you in the chat have seen that already. But in terms of those interventions, popping them in place and then leaving them there and assuming you've done the job doesn't necessarily help you. You need to put them in, you need to monitor them and make sure they work to start with, and that they continue to work over time as the workplace changes, as the tasks change, potentially as the materials change, as the floor and the footwear wear out. The critical thing for me in terms of analysing data and looking at root cause is not to assume that human error is the sole root cause of your slips and trips. In any slip, trip or fall, a human made an error, but typically that error is very heavily influenced by the environment, by their behavior, by the task that they're doing. And an awful lot of analysis I've seen gets as far as human error and stops. And human error is quite a useful get out clause because it means the company had no fault. It means that you can say, well, you can't put a claim in because that was your fault, you fell over. We'll talk about the legalities of that in a different forum, but getting down to that point doesn't help you prevent the next one of those incidents. If somebody tripped over an obstacle or slipped on a leak or whatever it might be, if you stop at human error, you don't get down to that root cause. Having good quality data lets you look at those common issues, lets you query those root causes, and lets you analyze everything that's going on across your organization to help get down below that human error level and take that as one contributing factor and actually start to do something proactive to prevent people having the issues. And I think that's the critical thing for me, is it's the reason that I've been a partner with Proactively since you demonstrated the system to me, because it helps. It does all those things, and it does it in a very simple way that organizations can customize based on what they want. So from my point of view, it answers the only bit of the training that I've been doing for 15 years that I couldn't tell people what the solution is. And now here's a perfect example of the solution. So for me, it's ideal. Thank you very much for everyone for your attention. I'm just going to pop up a slide with our contact details. So if you've got any sort of deep technical questions that we haven't got time for in these last 5 minutes, you can get in touch with myself, Rachel, or Alison. If you're interested in seeing a proper demonstration of the system, and it is worth doing because once you've seen it, you realize how simple it is, and it gives you all sorts of ideas for things that you can do. But I did notice as we went on, we have had at least one question in the chat. So Michelle asked a question, which I think is aimed at you really, Alison, which is, has the system been designed to adapt to legislative requirements outside the UK and Europe?
So we don't really concentrate on legislative requirements. It's about managing risk well. And if you're doing that, then let's hope you're within the legal requirements. I work with a lot of multinational companies, and there's often a question on, oh yes, we have to record this, we have to keep all the paperwork because it's a legal requirement, and we go through this debate several times. And I know I've had this debate with Rob as well, where he says, really HSE isn't expecting you to have this bureaucratic system that is paperwork and that no one is really using. What they want is to see something that works and you effectively managing your risk. So that has been our focus rather than legal requirements. Of course, you can tailor the questions, and if you have specific requirements, that's the whole point, is that you can bring them in.
And a second question from Michelle as well, which was, can the system be used effectively on large construction sites, which I think you've just broadly touched on, but
Yeah, I think it works really well for construction sites. So there's a few things. Construction, generally, you have a principal contractor and then you have a large number of subcontractors that they're controlling. So I work, of course, with big construction companies, and they get really frustrated when this information comes in different formats. So what they're looking for is a consistency. So all their subcontractors working for the same system, so able to get on board with that really quickly. What we have is the QR code. So I mentioned very quickly that you can imagine a subcontractor comes onto site, he presses his phone against the QR code, he then gets access to the mobile reporting. So now he can use those forms if he sees an observation, if he wants to report something, he can report that straight into your system. And, it just means that everyone is working together in the same direction. It will save an enormous amount of time. And of course, gathering all that information together on a combined dashboard for the project rather than for the individual contractors will help manage it as a project rather than as an individual company. I think also the fact that we can use photos, which make it very quick to report, and the mobile app works everywhere. So, the construction site might well be out of mobile coverage. Then it will save that report on the mobile app and send it when you're back in coverage. And that is a bit the question that Michelle asked before about outside the UK. So UK and Europe, we tend to have very good mobile signal. Whereas I work in Africa, in India, the signal can be very patchy. So that ability to save on the mobile app that it's automatically stored and then will automatically transfer is also massively important for areas outside the sort of areas where you have good coverage.
I've got one for you as well, just before we finish off. We have talked, and naturally, because of the focus of the session, on traditional health and safety and reporting health issues and safety issues and near misses and all the things that we're very familiar with. But given the flexibility of the system, presumably you could use it for something completely different, monitoring productivity or something else. You could tie some of those features, and I could be wrong here, but I could see that you could design forms that would let you tie some other features that workplaces gather, some other data they like to use, all into one system. So they're not having to marry up lots of different bits of software.
This is exactly the case. So the mobile reporting system, it's not a modular system. You get the ability to build whatever you want using it. And when I'm starting with calling it a health and safety system, but very, very quickly companies see the opportunity for other ways. And I think when you talk about productivity, that's exactly right. You can imagine recording temperature, recording time directly from the workplace where the person is using that machine, sort of time and motion, kind of maintenance type issues. That's all possible with this system. So yes, from an operational risk management perspective, built into the system are the forms for environment, quality, health, safety, some security forms. Those come as standard, but you can really, the sky's the limit for what you want to report from when you're away from your desk, which is, that's where most of these issues happen. So it's a great way for doing that.
Excellent. We've got a really interesting question from Paul. Whether or not a reporting system or risk assessments fit for purpose will ultimately be the matter for a judge, whether due to legal enforcement or civil claims. Is the system supported by paper-based evidence that shows its use? Because courts will want hard copies of evidence to show that it's been used and applied.
Okay, so it's certainly, you can print a PDF, you can export to PDF, export to Excel to keep that data. Paper-based evidence that shows its use. Well, I think exporting the reports as a PDF, if you want to do that, is very possible. I think really for going to court. So for example, you can sign the bottom of the forms. There's one of the questions is a signature, and you can use your finger to squiggle in the bottom. But we all know that squiggle very rarely looks like our signature. For me, the advantage of having the signature is it makes people pay attention when they're filling in the form. So they actually put accurate data in it, and then they squiggle on the bottom. If you're going to court, then Do you remember you could see the history tab when we showed those 3 screenshots? So all time date stamped. We have when the report was created, when someone read it, when someone added notes to it. For example, they disagreed with something, they might have changed it. That change will be recorded on the history. They set an action, the action was completed, it was verified as effective. All that comes through on the history, all time, date, and person stamped. And that is, you cannot change that. That is part of the built-in way that a digitalized mobile system works. You know, that data is available for going to court if it came to it. And that will carry a lot more, I think, than, for example, I have someone who uses it for Legionella testing. You know, it's a type of environment where Legionella is quite a big risk, and they have people coming and going that might be more susceptible. So at the moment they have, or before we met, they had a paper book that they kept by the boiler, and they went and they did the measurements and things and wrote them in the paper book, and they stuck the book back by the boiler. Now you think, is that really good? If you go to court with that book, you could write anything in that book. Whereas if you use our system, you take a photo of it, it's time date stamped, you can see, oh, this was the temperature reading at this time. And that will carry, I think, much more weight than the paper-based evidence when he goes to court with this book that has been dropped on the boiler floor and stood on a few times. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Alison. Now, unfortunately, we've hit time because I had all manner of difficult left curveball sorts of questions for you. But you know, that's my fun ruined. But thank you everybody for joining us. Hopefully you found it useful. If you want any more information about the system, if you want any more information about preventing slip, trips and falls or anything, you've got our contact details there. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everyone.